for the legendary INDRA NOOYI. Good evening, ma'am. It's an honor, and thank you for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. And what a distinguished group of people to be amongst.
Thank you. Indra, before we get started this evening, what do you see in this room around you?
Let me just say something. You know, when I was often asked about my own success, I often said that I came to the US through the front door with a valid visa, and then I worked my way up and I was pulled up by a lot of people. And I'm eternally grateful to the United States because I am a product of America. And when I look at all of you, I'm going to assume that everybody came through the front door with a valid visa, and you're making a great living here in the US, creating wonderful companies and employment. And I hope, like me, you too are very, very grateful to this country, and you give back not just to this country, but also to India. But that's what I see. People entrepreneurs, made in America, born in India, and helping both countries.
Wonderful, Indra. What a great start to this evening. Inspired by your interaction with Ken Hirsch, that motivated me to start this evening with this very question. So like you mentioned, all are products of America, born in India, but products of America who went on to build great companies. Thank you.
Okay.
Before we move on, I read your book, My Life on Full. So powerful, yet very relatable. It is very evident from your book that you drew a lot of inspiration from your beloved Tata. Can you share a childhood memory and your family's influence on you?
Thank you. You know, most of us who grew up in the 50s and the 60s, I'm talking about that time, remember, it was just a few years after India got independence. And I grew up in Madras, which was very conservative. And all my life, my parents just told me that when you're 18, we're going to get you married. But then I grew up with a very powerful grandfather. I won the lottery of life in that I had a wonderful grandfather who said, my granddaughters are going to dream and be whatever they want to be. We're not going to shackle them by getting them married.
Excellent. So can we have a big cheer to Indira's inspiration, her Tata and our Tatas?
Of course, yes. But I can tell you, having a Tata around and allowing him to let us dream is not easy because he held us to a very high standard. And those days it felt like, Tata, can you give us a break? But today, I wish he was around because I'd like to tell him how grateful I am to him for doing what he did for us, how he made us do our homework, how he taught us to argue both sides of an issue because he was a judge and he wanted to hear both sides of every issue. How he pretended he couldn't read the newspaper and made us read the newspapers to him, read it aloud, so that we would understand the stories. I think about all that and I say to myself, how can I say thank you to my Tata today? Because he died a long time ago. But he left us an indelible mark on our lives, and I would be eternally grateful to him. And if you have a Tata in your life, please say thank you to them when you can. Don't wait till they pass away and then wish you could say thank you to them.
Thank you to all our Tatas, and I'm sure he's watching you and he wants many more Indiras to do the same.
I hope so.
Indra, your mother encouraged you and your sister Chandrika to pretend being the Prime Minister of India and encourage you to give speeches. Can we hear a sentence or two from your speech?
Well, that's a tough one, because I don't quite remember, because we were children at that time. And every day was a different character. One day it was Prime Minister, was President, Chief Minister. She'd make up leaders that she'd want us to be. And it was not that our speeches were good. We had to be better than the other ones, that's all. We had to outrun the competition. And so it was really a question of how can I do better than my sister? And my sister focused on how can she do better than me. And my mother was very democratic. She never said, hey, yesterday Chandrika won, today I've got to give Indra a chance. She, was very clear in saying whoever does the best job gets this little tiny piece of chocolate. And so I think that chocolate tastes better than any other chocolate I can eat today, even if it's a whole bar. Because I earned that piece of chocolate. I didn't buy that piece of chocolate. So there's no point giving the speech because it would have been very childish. But she instilled in us a sense of confidence and told us, dream big, you can be anything you want, as long as I can get you married off at age 18, which is what she always said to us. So one foot on the brake, one foot on the accelerator.
Nice. Yeah, you've mentioned many times, one foot on the brake, one foot on the accelerator. So again, a lot of credit to your mom for you all what you are today. So big cheers to all the wonderful women and all the mothers in this room.
Absolutely. More than a cheer.
So you grew up in an era where opportunities for women were very limited. Did young Indira dream of becoming a rocket scientist, a prime minister, or maybe the CEO of a cola company? And how did those dreams shift over years?
Remember, when I was growing up, I didn't know what business was. So there was no question of CEO. I didn't know what a CEO was. So as a child, my vision was I've got to study. I've got to do well in school and college, because if you didn't do that, I'd get married off to some guy I don't want to get married off to. And the whole idea was to do well in school and college to avoid marriage. That was my only goal. I did not want an arranged marriage. I'm sorry, that's the unfortunate truth. And as long as we kept doing that, I just thought I was a chemistry undergraduate, so I assumed I would be a chemist. I dreamed of being a chemist in a lab. And then my sister gets into IIM undergrad. And And because we were a year apart, I felt I had to go to IIM also, otherwise they'd say, oh, Chandrika's a successful sister, and Indra's a failure. So I applied to IIM Karen and I got in. So it was just competition between the two girls.
Sure. So was it because of you didn't want to get married as a young Indira is what brought you to the US?
No, not really. I didn't want to go to an arranged marriage.
Got it.
Not that my parents had a wonderful marriage. It had nothing to do with any role models I'd seen. I just thought that meeting somebody for a few hours and then going through marriage and then living with them for the rest of my life was something I just couldn't fathom. I'm sorry. All the guys are good, don't get me wrong. I just couldn't see it.
Sure, thank you. So for people who don't know, Indira had her first job in Chicago with Boston Consulting Group, and Indira is a huge fan of consulting, just like all of us in this room. Indira, after your time at ABB, you decided to go work for PEPSICO. Wayne Calloway at PEPSICO convinced you to take up the job with PEPSICO over GE. How did that go?
Well, when I come from Motorola to ABB with an individual I loved working with.
Yes.
And he left to go to Germany. I didn't want to follow him to Germany.
Right.
So I decided to leave ABB, and I got calls from a lot of my clients when I was a consultant. Those clients called me and said, could you come work with us? And then I got a call from GE, Jack Welch, and I got a call from PepsiCo saying, could you come and talk to us? So I talked to both companies. GE was more my kind of company because I was an industrial technology kind of person. And PepsiCo was a fun company, but I didn't think about joining PepsiCo. Wayne Calloway, who was CEO of PepsiCo, sat on the GE board. And he knew that I was interviewing at GE too. So I told both companies, I let them know on April 15th who I'm accepting. Now those who know Wayne Calloway, he never speaks much. When I interviewed with him for 1 hour, I spoke for 59 minutes, he spoke for 1 minute. Not because I want to speak for 59 minutes, because he had this habit of saying, and that's it. So I had to keep the conversation going. So the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and it's Wayne Calloway. And he goes, Indra, this is Wayne Calloway. I just came from the GE board meeting, and I understand you're close to accepting GE. Jack Welch is a great CEO, and I can understand why you want to join GE. But let me tell you why you should come to PepsiCo. And this man, who spoke 1 minute with me, that I interviewed with him, spoke for 5 minutes laying out the case for me to come to PepsiCo, including saying, if you came to PepsiCo, I will make sure I develop you and I support you and make sure that your entry into this company is easy and you can perform very well. So my need is greater for you than GE's need for you. And I thought, the CEO of such a big company, if he could take that much time and with all humility call me and make a pitch to join PepsiCo, it spoke volumes about the culture and the zeitgeist of the company. So I picked PepsiCo not for the business, but for the personality. And I joined PepsiCo.
Thank you. So, Wayne Holloway assured you that they needed you more at PepsiCo than with GE. In our consulting business, it is an everyday process where we lose great candidates to our competitors or our companies. So what is that one thing everyone in this room can do to be that Wayne Holloway and convince and assure many Indiras like you that we need them more?
Well, that's a tough one because in many ways, PepsiCo had a culture and a reputation, and Wayne Calloway had a reputation and a culture that he would always keep his word. So you all have to look at yourselves and say, do you have a calling card? Do you have a reputation? Have you built one? Have you built a personal brand that people can say, look, I really want to work for this person because I trust what this person is saying about developing me. If you're going to use me as a tool of the trade, as opposed to looking at me as an asset, then I should shop myself all the time. But if you really look at me as an asset, as a talent that you want to develop and support and mentor, I think people will stick around. So it's a two-way street.
Excellent. Great lesson for all of us. Thank you. So there are hundreds of founders and leaders here today who have built successful businesses of various sizes and now have the privilege to mentor young talent to be the next leaders. What is that one piece of advice you can give us so that we become the best mentors in developing a great talent?
So the first thing I tell you is that talent development, people development is a very difficult job and it's an unselfish job. Because if you do a good job with talent development, they could take your job, right? So you've got to develop talent and say to yourself, it's okay if they take my job because I'm going to create a bigger job for myself. So if you're willing to be that unselfish, you can develop people. And the more you demonstrate that you develop people, people want to stick around and work for you. So you have to ask yourself, are you a talent developer or a talent blocker? Because many CEOs who are insecure block the talent and stifle them so that they don't rise and then they go, why am I here? Because my career is blocked. So each of us has to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what kind of an environment are we creating? A growing, thriving environment or an environment where there's a ceiling? And ask yourself a question, why did people leave my company? What could I have done to keep them? Do the exit interviews. Keep that database because that will tell you a lot about the culture of your company and about yourself. So a lot lies in the leadership here.
Great advice for all of us here. I think that directly applies and relates to our business at any scale. Thank you for that. You have always been a great advocate of succession planning. You already had people personally mentored by you at PepsiCo to take your role after you. How can we go about doing the same? Because what problem we face here, many of our children don't want to take up our businesses. So, can we have a solution for that?
Well, ask yourself a question. Are you developing a business or are you developing a dynasty? That's a question you have to ask yourself.
Sure.
If you're developing a dynasty, sit there and worry about whether your children will take the job from you, even if they're capable or not. Very often you take your kids, force them into the job, even if they're not capable. On the other hand, if you're saying, I want to build a company, I want the best leaders to thrive, and I want to grow this company and make it iconic, and incidentally, my children can be owners of the company and can get a dividend or get a stock price that's good, get a salary, I don't care what it is. Let them do what they want to do. That's a whole different mindset. So don't sit here forcing your company down the throat of your kids. If they want to do it, they'll come into it. Don't force them to come into the company because it's not good for the company, it's not good for the kids. I'm sorry, guys.
So bribing our kids with a lifetime supply of Pepsi to come take our roles is not an option.
Well, at least that's a fun product. Think about software development.
Right.
It's kind of different.
Indra, room is full of small and medium-sized business leaders who aim to grow big. In your TED talk, Adam Grant mentioned how you would hire outside experts to train you, to teach you about things you didn't know. You obviously had the power, you had the resources, but not everyone in this room have the money or the resources to do the same. How do you think we should tackle that?
I actually think you're all very, very lucky because when I was studying electronics or paper making or cars or whatever I was studying, there was no online course at that time.
Sure.
None at all. In fact, YouTube didn't exist, the smartphone didn't exist. Think about it. These are all things that happened after 2006 and well before I became CEO. And so for every one of these things, you had to go find the books, study yourself, or hire professors to teach you the stuff. So the company hired me professors to teach me all the stuff, and I put in the time to study. In today's world, you've got every course available to you for free online, which you can, watch, study, understand any time of the day or night at your pace. So I'm actually envious about what you have. The problem you have is you have too much of it, right? You have too much of it. The question is, how do you sort of sort through all the clutter, pick out stuff that you're going to focus on, and actually focus on it. Don't look at the sound bites, don't look at the summaries. Actually watch a video. I'll give you an example. In Amazon, I sit on the board of Amazon, and when generative AI became such a big factor, they asked us to take online programs, and they gave us the online programs, the access to it, and they said, please make sure you take these programs because as a board member, you need to get educated on these. You could do it at your own pace, but we all have to do it. So I think you are incredibly lucky to have all these resources in front of you. Just utilize them, please utilize them. We complain to our kids and say, why don't you study more or learn more? All of this is available. We have to become students ourselves. It's high time we went back to it.
So there we have it. Probably we should go back to being students ourselves, scroll less of Instagram reels and maybe watch more videos on masterclass.
Well, good videos relevant to your profession, whatever it is.
Sure. Indra, you introduced design thinking at PepsiCo and you brought on Mauro Porcini as the Chief Design Officer. With businesses of our scale, how can we introduce or implement a design strategy into our business?
Well, design strategy in your business is very different than design strategy in consumer business.
Sure.
It's more how you approach the customer, how do you design your organization, very different industrial design, I'd say. And you don't need to hire high-priced talent because you don't need that kind of talent in your business. So maybe IT Serve can find design in the software industry that can provide a resource to everybody. That's something scale can help. But don't get caught up with consumer design. It's very different than design for industry. Very different.
Sure. You often talk about performance with purpose. What was the hardest part pushing this agenda when everyone around you was focused on more profits?
Well, the first thing I had to convince people is to say purpose doesn't come at the expense of performance. Performance and purpose are a virtuous circle. If you deliver performance, you can fund purpose. If you focus on purpose, it delivers more performance. So I had to make that case and demonstrate to people that performance and purpose are part of a virtuous circle. That's the first one. The second is very, very important for all of you also. When you're looking at a transformation, and that to a transformation that's outside in, not inside out. Remember, we didn't have a problem in PepsiCo. So it was not an inside-out transformation, it was a future-back transformation. To convince people to follow me and performance and purpose, you had to tell stories. Everywhere we went, everywhere I went, I had to tell stories. For example, I would talk about the fact that one of the planks of performance and purpose was environmental sustainability, and we had to reduce the water we use to make our beverages. And I would give the story of growing up in Madras where there was no water, how my mother and father would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, the corporation water would trickle from the tap, and they would collect big pots of it. And we had to learn to live with 2 pots each. That was reality. And I tell people, look, we live like this. How can we have a plant in the outskirts of Madras that uses 2.5 liters of water to make a liter of Pepsi? That is unconscionable. And so I will always tell people, put yourself in that situation. Think of every child as your child. Think of every farmer as a member of your family. So telling stories, making it very personal, you have to grab them by the heart and the head, not just say, this is a program of PepsiCo, do it. And you've got to repeat that message again and again and again. And every time with stories that are sticky, stories that are emotional, stories that are personal. And that's what I have to do again and again and again to get people to buy into the program.
Great, thank you. Every industry is undergoing rapid transformation with shifts in consumer behavior and technology. What do you think is the next big disruption in consulting business, and how can leaders prepare for that?
Well, there's many kinds of consulting. I'm a strategy consultant. That's a whole different ballgame. Let me make a few comments relative to all of you.
Yes, please.
I think the key thing is those days where it was just a labor arbitration. That business may actually go down quite a bit because all the simple code writing we used to do through labor arbitration can be done through ChatGPT type of approach. So you can have checkers of codes, but writing code, simple code, I don't think is going to exist as a thriving business. So what you've got to do is scour your business, comb through it all and say, what is the low value added stuff that can be done through some sort of an AI approach? And if you were recommending to a client how they should run the business, what would you tell them they should get rid of and give to technology? And then you have to think about how to migrate that whole chain to say, how am I going to add more and more value to the offering as opposed to strictly labor arbitration? And I think that's going to be a tough challenge because for so long, so many companies have worked on this labor arbitrage. And I think that era might be coming to an end. It doesn't bode well for many IT companies in India who also have to rethink the model. But I think especially for many of you who work in that area, you have to think hard.
Thank you. 5 things, or maybe 3, 4, any 5 things you think our audience can do to probably double our revenues in the next 3 to 5 years?
What you guys can do, double revenues?
Yes.
Find the right companies and partners to work with. Because today, with the disruption happening in the world, you've got to figure out which partners you want to hook yourselves to and who you're going to learn from. Because you can't do it all yourself. The small and medium-sized companies, you can't do it all yourself. On the elevator coming down, we were talking to the AWS team. That's a great partnership. And, try to get closer to AWS, learn everything they're teaching you so that you can use those learnings to grow. So I think this is not about a linear growth where you just go there and try to get as much business as you can. That's really not the game. It's a question of how are you going to learn from big guys and then let them include you in assignments where they don't have the labor to do the job. So you've got to become a valuable partner to the big guys. And that's something you have to think through. And companies don't have the wherewithal now to handle a whole bunch of small guys out there. So find the right partners, work with them, learn from them, and see how you can have them give you business. I think that's the way to grow going forward.
So right partners is the key where we could all start to look at learning new things and do things the way they do and then grow from there.
Yeah, because you have to stay a step ahead of everybody. You can't do it all yourself. You're going to need the bigger guys to help with knowledge transfer, if you want to call it that.
So we walk together, we walk far.
You bet.
Thank you.
Walking alone, it's going to be slow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indra, before signing off on a $1.5 billion spend at PepsiCo to overhaul the corporate enterprise systems, you did your own research, you did a lot of reading by yourself. Did you ever imagine back then that there would be something like AI?
No. Look, 2 months before AI and GPT became a big factor, nobody knew it was going to become a big factor, let's be honest.
Right.
So in 1999 and 2000, for sure I wasn't thinking about AI. I wasn't even thinking about the cloud. I was thinking about how to spend my billions of dollars on SAP and Oracle, which almost feels ancient these days, right? So that's what we were focused on. I wish I had cloud services then. I don't know about AI because they're still being proven. But, I wish I'd had an AWS by my side that I could have included them in my entire IT transformation. I didn't have that luxury. I had to go through the pain of putting in an SAP system. It was painful, very painful. So we had to go through that.
So if you were the current CEO of PEPSICO, how would you use AI?
You see, it's very difficult because a lot of the use cases are still being proven out. People are talking about it. People are afraid that if they don't have a big investment in AI, they'll be left behind. But they're still unclear as to what the benefits are of AI. So I think the best thing for companies, if I were the CEO today, I would first train all my leaders, the top 2 or 3 levels of the company on AI, and what it could do for the company today, tomorrow, whatever. But then I'd take 1 or 2 areas and go very deep and say, let's use these as test cases to prove out how we can get benefits from AI. Whether it's innovation, whether it's some sort of a customer call center if you have one, whatever it is, but baseline it properly, understand the benefits, and figure out whether it's a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month cycle, when do you want to measure the benefits. Because you need to talk about the benefits to the rest of the organization to bring them along. But while I do that, the other thing I'll be doing is to say, what employees am I going to be displacing? And what am I going to do for them? How am I going to retrain them? Because if you don't do that, believe me, they will thwart your efforts. So I think about the human side of people who are going to be displaced and the productivity side of what the company could be if AI became, a much bigger factor in the company. But I would document, baseline, very methodically think about how AI as an agent is going to help improve my business. It has to be approached methodically, otherwise you're going to see a lot of disappointed people, a lot of investments going to waste, and we're going to keep talking about how it helps medical innovation. Medical innovation is not the whole industry, okay? There's a lot more than medical innovation. We've got to make sure we understand the use cases very, very carefully.
Yeah, so while we continue to adapt and innovate in AI, so like how you wish there were cloud companies back then. If you ever need cloud companies, if you ever need AI expert, the room is full of that right now, so IT Servers got your back.
Thank you.
Indra, one business win at PepsiCo that you cherish the most and one loss that you regret the most?
After 100 years with the Red Company, Madison Square Garden shifted to PepsiCo. And I thought it was a big win. We got the NBA and Madison Square Garden, both of whom had been with the Red Company for 100 years. So they switched. And I thought that was a huge win. I think one of my disappointments was, just before I became CEO, we lost NASCAR. And NASCAR is a very interesting culture. And I would have liked for our company to have been part of NASCAR. But you win a few, you lose a few. We won the Yankees, we won NBA, we won Madison Square Garden. That's huge. So I'll take those two any day.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You mentioned about your win with Yankees, your win with the NBA. In the previous question, you mentioned how partnership is very important, and you also mentioned in your book when you won NBA and the Yankees, you did mention that they were looking for the right partner, and then PepsiCo went on to become that good partner.
That's true. Yeah. I remember Adam Silver asking the commissioner of the NBA said to me, why is it that the NFL gets such visibility that the NBA does not? And I told him, look, the reason is the NFL is partnered with us. The big advantage of PepsiCo was that we focused on showcasing the sport. The Red Company focused on showcasing its brand. 2 different approaches. We showcase the sport and then our brand. And so Adam Silver said, you know what? When the contract comes up in a year, you guys are going to be in pole position. And we were, and he leaned in, and it's been a wonderful ride.
Great.
Yeah.
You were the first woman, first immigrant, first woman of color to lead a Fortune 50 company. Can you tell all the women leaders in this room, how did you go about navigating a male-dominated corporate America?
I have to be honest with you, when I became CEO, the attention from the press and the media was about everything you said. From my perspective, I was just another CEO to keep this company successful. So, the fact that I was a woman was incidental, alright? So I was singularly focused on how do I make sure this company stays successful well into the future. And, okay, there are men around, I have to deal with them. But let's all focus on a job that's to be done. I don't care if you're a guy or a gal or whatever you are, we have a job to do. So, at every point in time, I focused on doing things better than everybody else so that I was respected for the job. And I put the company before me. So when I did those two things, people said, hey God, we've got to give her respect because the company comes first for her. And she always puts the job in front of everything else. And she happens to be a woman. So that was incidental. And the focus was never on that. And maybe behind my back they talked about me, who cares? I was the boss, remember? So, you know, it's been about systematically doing what I needed to do because had I failed, the consequences would have been horrible. For women, it's interesting, right? The positive is great. But had I failed, they would have said, here's a woman of color from an emerging market running a Fortune 50 company, and she was a gigantic failure. That would have been a disaster. I didn't want that. But I didn't want them to say, she succeeded because of that. She succeeded because she was damn good CEO. That's all I wanted to do.
So remember guys, she is the boss. So Indra, did you ever experience the glass ceiling?
Did I experience the glass ceiling? No. I mean, I'm sure it was there. But it's glass, remember? And from my perspective, look guys, my entire life, I focused on putting the company before me in my entire life. And second is, I was very clear that I was going to be judged by my job. And I'll tell you why, because when I came to this country, and when I started working, it was not like the 2000s. This was in 1978, 1980. There were hardly any women. There were hardly any Indian women in senior positions. And I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know how to do makeup. I didn't know anything. So I decided that I was going to survive and move ahead. Not based on looks, but on brains. The quality of my work. That's all I did. And I took those days. I took those days because there weren't other women to show me up. There was no, absolutely fabulous looking woman who walked in as, brain to take over the boardrooms. I was the only one there. So people gave me respect for who I was. Today's world is very different. There are a lot more women and there's a lot more competition. You have to worry about looks. But those days, God, I look at my photographs from those days, I feel sorry for myself. It was pretty bad. I don't even know how I got hired in PEPSICO or anything like that. But clearly Ben Calloway saw something that, I felt but didn't see. So, c'est la vie.
So Indra, at the scale of the company I run, I often get stressed and burnt out. I try to deal with it by taking a swim or cooking a new recipe, often leaving a messy kitchen behind for my wife. She's sitting somewhere here. How did Indra deal with her stress?
See, had you cleaned up the kitchen, you could have addressed the stress.
I do.
Just remember that.
Cleaning
the kitchen is a big de-stressor. You see, the problem is, or the issue is that I had no time to stress out because I had 2 kids, I have a husband. I had a very pressure-filled job. So you come home, you can't talk about work because your husband and kids do not want to hear about work. My husband has his job, he's bringing that home. And so the last thing you have time for is to stress out. So the minute you walk into the house, you become mom, you're with the kids, your homework, you've got to do everything in the house and do whatever it takes to get ready for the next day. Once the kids go to sleep, you continue reading all that you have to read for the job. So there was no time to stress, to be honest. The few times that I was so angry about something, I'd go to my little bathroom of my office, shut the door and speak to myself. Because you can't take your problems home, you can't share them with your employees or your friends because you're all confidential. So I would scream at myself in the mirror, silently scream, I'm shy. Silently scream at myself in the mirror, shed a few tears and then, wipe myself up, put on my lipstick and come out. But, people often to men, throw things around, utter four-letter words. We didn't have that luxury. And I'm glad I didn't have that luxury. Because to me that's a cop-out. Okay, I didn't have that luxury. I just powered it.
So to sum it up, make no time to have stress.
I wouldn't quite put it that black and white. You have stress. A lot of people handle stress differently. In my case, I internalized it and I said, I've got other things to do. Let me not just sit here and say I'm stressed out. What's somebody going to do for me when I'm stressed out? Okay, very often people think everybody's going to run around you and say, oh, she's so stressed out, let's help her. There's nobody to help me there. I have to take care of it myself. So if I took an hour to de-stress, that's an hour lost with my kids or my reading. So I got practical.
So Indra, moving on, India continues to emerge as a global player. Young and dynamic leaders are on the rise. In the audience today, we have another young and dynamic leader, Honorable Minister Nara Lokesh from the state of Andhra Pradesh.
He is fantastic.
He is fantastic, yes. So he embodies this think global, act global approach. What is one advice you can give him as he continues to navigate this global complex landscape?
I just spent some time with him today and his agenda is so clear, he's so articulate, and I have great confidence in Andhra Pradesh. I was just listening to him talk about how brick by brick he's going to build the capability of the state. Now, what struck me when I met him was there's a next generation of incredible leaders looking to burst forward into the Indian scene and make a difference. And I don't think the system allows them to burst forward. I think there's got to be a system where you say, look, one generation, you've got to move ahead and let this generation rise. You've got to let the locations of the world rise. Because people like them are going to change the face of India and bring India into the 21st and the 22nd century. I think we have very good people, don't get me wrong, very good people, but perhaps code date has gone. And I think we have to retire a lot of them to let these youngsters take over and then sit back and enjoy the country that results as a consequence. I think that's what's badly made.
Thank you for your confidence. Thank you for your confidence, Indra. We are sure our state is in great hands.
I'm sure, yes.
Indra, your life story could make for a compelling web series. Are you interested in that kind of project?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Actually, I'm a very private person. And even this book and everything around it was a little too much in the public. And so at this point, no, absolutely, definitely not.
Noted. I'm sure that's a huge disappointment for a lot of aspirants who wants to make your story, but
just
that's
watch,
a big
watch all my videos, that's the video series, that's plenty.
Indra, I have a special section today, a short one. I want to call them the Mythbusters. This is from a lot of stories we have heard, and I just want you to tell if there is a myth or truth. My first one is, so a woman from Atlanta tried to sell PEPSICO the Coke recipe, and PEPSICO reported back to Coke. Is that true or a myth?
I think somebody tried to give us the recipe and we said, it's not good, it's not very good. We don't want to see it. Cooking, but people try always to sell us something or the other. But both companies are very respectful companies. We do not accept secrets from the other. Coke does the same thing. If somebody gives them PepsiCo secrets, they don't even open the envelope, they send it right back to us. So both companies are very good.
So you're more like frenemies.
Yeah, that's
So the next big question. A consultant walked into PepsiCo office in Chicago with a Coke product and he was terminated right away.
That's an overstatement. Probably tried it, not terminated.
Okay.
It's not a consultant, it's usually some senior executive who'll walk into my office with this can of some red beverage and I just tell him, you can go drink it outside and then come back.
Sure.
So that's okay. But if you invited me to your home when I was CEO, and I check your refrigerator, and if I found Coke, I'd go home. I'm being honest with you. I've done that hundreds of times. In the first 5 minutes I'm in anybody's home, I'll check the refrigerator, and if I saw the wrong beverage, I'd leave.
Point noted.
Now I'm retired, you can do whatever you want.
Indra, I grew up watching MTV Pepsi Dance Connection, and it is always that ye dil mange more. But keeping time in essence, I think I need to move on to my next section and just put you on the hot seat. Do you guys think we should do a rapid fire with Indra?
Go for it.
Classic Pepsi or Pepsi bubbly?
I drink regular Pepsi.
Pizza or Tayar Sadam?
Pizza.
Rajni? Oh, that was a surprise. Rajnikant or Kamal Hassan?
A little bit more Kamal Hassan.
Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli?
Two generations. I love Sachin. I love Virat. But 2 generations. I adore both of them. Yeah.
So I want to give you a few names, and I want to ask one word that comes to your mind when you hear that name. Elon Musk.
Crazy. Nice crazy.
Steve Jobs.
Innovative.
Ratan Tata.
Humanitarian.
One word about Indra Nooyi.
I don't know. I think purpose-driven.
Purpose. What is the last movie you watched?
The last full movie I watched. I'm watching this TV show which is so crappy, but I'm watching it. And I mean crappy in the sense of, I don't know why I'm watching it. It's called The Fabulous Lives of Bollywood Wives. I'm obsessed with all of them. Like, what am I doing watching this? It's just not me. But I can't put it down. And you know, I'm tempted to go to Bombay and call them up and say, why are you doing this? But it's just, I'm addicted to it.
You have done very well in the rapid fire. I want to end my rapid fire with one last question. Will you try your hand at the casino tonight?
Nick,
Will you try your hand at the casino tonight?
no, absolutely not. Waste.
Indra, it was wonderful having you here tonight. Life comes full circle when we are able to share our stories, and those stories become meaningful when we are able to share our experience. Ladies and gentlemen, today we uncovered story of one of the greatest women leaders this generation has ever seen, and that itself has been a master class in excellence. Thank you, Indra. That is Indra Nooyi for you all.